Today's tutorial will instantly make your edits look more professional. I'm going to teach you how to make this fun Johnny Harris-style animation. Download the project file below and follow along. Now let's get started. So we're in After Effects here, and the first thing we're going to do is create a new composition. So I'm going to label this working 1. We'll leave it at 1920 by 1080, and we will leave the frame rate at 23.976. And I will drag this up to our working folder. Now what I want to do is actually bring in some assets. So I have these assets here, and I have two different images that I had created in Midjourney. We'll just use this one, and I'll drag this in here. And then I have these textures, and this is all from my 4K texture pack. So we have this fun castle wall, chipped wood, dark brown paper, all of these different ones. I think I like the dark brown paper, so we're going to use that. And then the real fun stuff comes with these ink bleeds, and this is from this brand new ink bleed pack I just created. I have 40 files total, 20 for HD and 20 for 4K. So I want to show you guys just a quick little trick here. If I try to just drag in this folder right now, it's gonna give you this error message, and I'm not sure why. So I'm gonna show you guys how to work around this if you have a folder of content that you want to bring in. I'm gonna hold down the Alt key and then drag this folder in, and then now everything imports in correctly. Silly, I know, but that is what you have to work with. So I'm going to bring in all of these assets here, and I'm going to bring them into our assets folder. So now when we open up our assets folder here, I'm going to bring in our dark brown paper texture. And like I said, it's a 4K size texture. So we're in a 1920 by 1080 window. So we're literally working within half the size of these textures. That's how big they are. I'm going to shrink this down to 50% here, so everything fits within our window. And what I want to do first is actually brighten this up a little bit. So I'm going to add a levels effect. And all I'm going to do is change the output black to 91. And right away, it's a little bit brighter. That's what we want to go with for today's tutorial. So that is what we're working with. Now what I want to do is actually animate the texture itself. And this is something I've done other tutorials on, so I'll just go through this pretty quick. All right, but I'm going to press S, hold down R, and then P. All right, so now I could see all of my keyframes for position, scale, and rotation. I'm going to set a keyframe to start. I'm going to go down 16 frames. All right, now what I'm going to do is actually change the scale, position, and rotation of this texture. So I'll rotate things in here like this, bring it in like that. All right, now I'm going to go down 16 frames again. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing again, just to mix it up though. So I'll bring it in here, and then I'll even scale this in a little bit more. Nice. And the cool thing about working with 4K textures is that you could scale them so large and not lose much quality, which is great. Now what I'm going to do is go up 16 more frames again to the 2-second mark, and I'm going to copy our first keyframes, paste them in here, and here's what we have. Okay, what in the PowerPoint is that? I don't know. So in order to make this look choppy and better for what we're trying to accomplish here, I'm going to highlight all of our keyframes here, right click, toggle hold keyframe. So now we have the position, scale, and rotation changing every time the keyframe pops up. But it stops right there. Rather than copying and pasting keyframes all throughout this timeline, it's just such a timely process. I'm going to show you guys a shortcut, how to just speed up your workflow. I'm going to hold down the Alt button. I'm going to click on position here. I'm going to type in loop out. All right, and then what I'm going to do is right click, copy expression only, and then paste it onto these other values right here. So now it's a continuous loop for the entire duration of the actual composition. It's a nice little shortcut I like to use. So now what I want to do is still work on this background a little bit. So I'm going to click Control Y to add a solid, and I'm going to add a gradient ramp. And this is an effect we're going to be using more than once in today's tutorial. So at the start, it starts off with a vertical ramp, and you can't really see it because of the bounding box, but we have these little points for the black and for the white here. All I'm going to do is change the position of this. So I'm going to click right here for the black. I'm going to bring it to the left side. Then for the right, I'm going to click here and bring it over here. All right, so now we have a nice left to right gradient. It looks good. Okay, so for the start color, I'm going to use this pink hex code and just click OK. And then I have an orange hex code I'm going to paste in for the white. Boom. So now we have these brighter colors in here. Now what I want to do is just change this to gradient ramp solid. And I want to go through some blend modes. So the best way to go through blend modes is to hold on the shift button and click plus, and right here your modes will change. So I'm just going to go through here and see what I like. And we have some different options with how these colors are blending in with this light texture. But what I like the most, based on what we've seen so far, is the overlay. And then I'm going to drop the opacity to this to something like 55. So now here's what we have. So the next thing we're gonna do is start bringing some assets. So now what I'm gonna do is bring in this photo that I generated in Midjourney, and as you can see, it looks like it was drawn on like a white piece of paper or something like that. I want to actually get rid of the white. So the best way to do that, and I'll just solo this so we can really see, I'm gonna apply an extract effect. So what this is gonna do is actually allow us to extract the black or white values in an image. So right away, you start to see a lot of the white go away. All right, I'm gonna change the softness up a little bit too. Now this isn't perfect, but I'll take it because we're gonna be adding blend modes and other things to this. This looks good enough for what we're trying to accomplish today. So when I unsolo it, here's how it looks. And I have all these different blend modes to work with. I know that I like the way multiply looks on this texture with this setup, so we're just gonna throw that on there. And I need to drop the opacity down to something like, let's say, like 45. So it's pretty subtle. Next thing I want to do with this photo is actually create a mask around it, because I like how it's like a complete image, but I want it to be a little bit feathered off just to make it look like it's a little bit older. So I'm just going to like kind of cut into the image here and create a mask without any sort of defined shape. I'm just drawing around here. Cool. And now I'm going to feather this out to something like 130. I can make further adjustments if I want to. All right, so here's what we have so far. I love the way this looks. Now it's time for the fun stuff, the Luma matte transitions. So I'm gonna pull up our transitions right here. I'm gonna pull in Luma matte 1, and let's just see what this looks like. I'll shrink it down to 50%. And right away, we have something kind of just bleed in from the middle. And it looks really cool because, as you see here, it's just slowly growing on. And what's cool about Luma mattes is that, especially with one like this, is that you have these gray values appear before the white. So to just show you what that means, how these things work is that I actually use this track matte pick whip, and I pick whip it to the matte, and then it animates on. The cool thing about the gray values represent like a transparency, where the white, it will show you the complete image. So things really slowly bleed on like this, and it just looks a little bit cleaner. And something that would really take you maybe 10-20 minutes to make, you're able to do all right here, which is really cool. But we have one issue with this transition along with the others, and that is that they all have a stopping point where you see the actual image go away. And that is such an easy fix. I'm going to right click on the layer here, go to time, freeze on last frame. So now when things animate in, it stays. And that is what we want out of an effect. Now what we're going to do is create some text. So I'm going to pull up our type tool here and type in Atlantis. All right, I'm going to center this up here with our align tool. And then I'm using this Adobe font, this LTC Castellan Pro Bold. I'm gonna probably just shrink this to something like here. That looks pretty good. Now, similar to before with what we did with that like pink and orangish background, we're going to add a gradient ramp to this text. And I just want to focus on this text right now only. We have these points that we saw from earlier. So I'm just going to bring one up here, I'm going to bring one right here. And I'm just positioning it like this because it kind of adds like a slant to the gradient, which I think looks cool. So now what I'm going to do is paste in some hex codes. So for the start color, we're going to use this reddish color. And then for the end color, we're going to use this grayish color, which you can barely see right now because we're soloing it. But now here's how that looks. And if we want, we could always drop the opacity of this background if we felt like, it was a little hard to read the text. We could also make the text just a little bit bigger. So now what I'm going to do is animate the tracking of this text right here. I'm going to go to animate and then go to tracking. And what tracking does is it spaces out the spacing between each letter, right? So this kind of looks like the Hollywood cinematic, titles you see all the time. I'm just going to space this out like here. I'm going to drag this to the very end. So let's just see how this looks. I love it. And for those who are wondering, I'm not using these keyframes specifically because I like the continuous, consistent movement. This is coming out, maybe I can even speed it up just a little bit. So I love the way this text looks and I like the way it's animating, but there's just a little bit more I want to do. So I'm going to show you how that's done. I'm going to add a fun CC light sweep effect. And right away, you see here, I'll just solo this text. It adds like a fun little light that goes across the entire word, all driven by this point. And this point is driven by an angle, and this is all of the default settings, by the way. So I'm just going to make some subtle changes. I'm going to go here, I'm going to hold down Shift and drag this point all the way to the left. And then I'm going to set a key point for the center. Then I'm going to go down and I'm going to drag this all the way across. Okay. I'll click U to show up all my keyframes, and I'll just bring this back over. All right, let's look at what we got. Oh, this is looking good. All right, now what one change I do want to make is the actual width of the sweep itself. I would just want a little bit more fall off between the letters, so I'm going to change this to 85. So now we just have a little bit more light. One little tip I want to share with you guys about this is that you want to make sure your light sweep goes beyond the point of when your animation is ending, right? Because even at the end of this animation, the light sweep is completely out of it. If I were to end it like right here, you still might be able to see a little bit. It's subtle, but it's just something I want to point out to you guys so you don't make that mistake. So now what we're going to do is create a fun little vignette. So I'm going to click Control Y to create a new solid, and we're going to just make this like a dark gray, like that. And now what I'm going to do is change our shape tool to ellipse, stay highlighted on the layer and double click the ellipse. And then I'm going to change the mask to subtract. All right, so now we have this nice little ellipse right here. And then I'm going to feather this out a lot, 600. So that is a lot of feathering here. We're also going to change this blend mode to something like multiply. But what I really want to do is actually animate this vignette, and I want it to expand outwards. So in order to do that is I'm going to go down to our mask here. I'm going to go to the start, set a keyframe, and I'm going to bring this in really tight, like right here. Then I'm going to bring this out like this. All right, it's coming together. Now there's a couple things I need to fix. One is I need to change the layer hierarchy. Right now I want our text to be on top. I don't want this to be impacted by the vignette. And also, I feel like this vignette's animating just a little bit too slow. So I'm going to just bring this in here. It's like 2 seconds. All right, love the way this looks. Now what we actually need to do is animate our text in, because I don't want to just see text from the start. So we're going to go back to our Luma maps here. Let's click through and see what we got. So we have this one that's coming in from the middle, coming from the outside to the middle. We have this one. We have a lot of different options. And I'm just clicking through to see what exactly I want. And that's fun. That's like a fun 8-bit video game looking transition. I want something that comes out from the middle. So like this paper one. I think I have another one. Boom, this fun paper transition. So all I'm going to do is bring in Luma Mat 11. I'll bring it up top. All right, and what I need to do is, because it's 4K, I need to shrink it to 50%. And then I need to pick whip our track matte from Atlantis to the mat itself. So now, this is how it looks. This looks good, but the thing about it is that I don't need the entire transition to fit the full frame of the comp. I only need it to take up the space for what we're trying to fill it with, which is this text box that we see. So I'm going to shrink down this a lot and just see, like, okay, like at its most furthest, it goes out to like there. So I'm just going to continue to shrink this down just a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, when the layer ends, you're no longer able to see what you're trying to show. So in order to combat that, I'm going to right click, time, freeze on last frame. And now when it animates in, it stays and it looks really slick. I actually want to offset this a little bit. That looks good. All right, so here's where we are. I love the way this looks, but I think it can look better. So I'm gonna make some adjustments here. I'm actually gonna change our vignette blend mode from multiply to hard light. And then I'm going to change this expansion out just a good bit. So it just slowly expands. And I'll change the start point to something like this. So it's slowly breathing away. Now for this image, I'm actually going to scale this up a little bit. Let's change it to like 123. Now what I want to do is add some sauce, because that's really why you're here. That's why you came to the channel. You want to know the secret sauce, and I got you. So I'm going to go to Layer, New, Adjustment Layer, and I'm going to add a camera lens blur effect to this. And it's going to impact everything. that's underneath because that's how adjustment layers work. I'm gonna put a keyframe here for blur radius, press U. I'm gonna go down to maybe like about another second here and set a keyframe for 0. Before I get too far ahead here, we're going to animate in this slate, right? So if I have everything start from the very first frame, we're going to miss part of that animation, and we don't want to do that. So I'm actually going to bump some things down. I'm going to bump down our Luma matte and our photo. I'm also going to bump down our text here in our text animation Luma. So I'm just going to bring this down here a little bit. So now it takes a half second, and things come in a little bit more gradually. I love the way this looks. Now what we want to do is bring our ink mats to the next level. So let me show you guys how it's done. I got our image and ink mat from earlier. I'm going to duplicate these and bring them up top. I'm going to drag them down a couple of keyframes, and I'm actually going to hide it for now. I'm going to go to this bottom one, and I'll label this white. I'll label the top one black. Okay, and we're going to solo this layer. We're going to change the matte to no matte. We're going to bring up the opacity all the way, and we're going to get rid of this extract effect because we don't need it anymore. All right, so now what I want to do is just add an invert effect to this. So now everything is flipped. I'll unhide it, and what I'm going to do now is change the blend mode to screen. Now we have the same thing, but it's just white instead of black. And it's a little hard to see right now, but stick with me. I'm going to rematte this to the Luma matte, and then I'm going to turn on the black. So now we have one ink bleed animating on before the other, and they're different colors. So now you have this fun like little spill off at first, and then it then comes on the black. Now, because we dropped the opacity from this top black one here at 35%, it's not going to look how it did before, you know, now that we have this white one under it. So if that doesn't bother you, keep it as is. It bothers me. So what I'm going to do is actually animate the opacity of this white one, and I'm going to set a keyframe here. I'm going to go down, set this to 0, and see how that looks. Nice. And what we're going to be doing is referencing another layer, and it's going to be giving displacement to our text. So it's going to basically add texture to our text. If that doesn't make sense, stick with me here. I'm going to change the source layer to this dark brown paper that we had animated from the start. And right away, you see all of this, you know, detail in the letters that kind of looks a little jittery. We're going to change this to luminance, change this to luminance, and then we're going to drop the horizontal displacement to 2 and the vertical displacement to 3. This certainly isn't something you have to do. I like doing it because it just blends in a little bit better with everything that we're, you know, animating and working with here. Oh, this looks so sweet. Okay, I love the way this working comp looks. Now it's time to add our final piece of sauce, which is actually animating in this entire slate itself. You could do a hard cut, but we have all these ink bleeds, we might as well use them. So what we're gonna do is go to our working folder here. I'm going to drag this to the pre-comp button, and we're going to label this render 1. Bring this up into our render folder here. Now with this pre-comp, what I want to do is actually bring in some ink bleeds. So we have all these ink bleeds here. Let's just check out ink bleed 3 and see how this looks. I love it. I'm going to bring it in right here. All right, and same as before, I'm going to drop this to 50%. So now it'll fill up the entire frame. And then what I need to do is take our working comp right here and track mat it to the mat itself. So now, here's how that looks. Now this moves in just a little bit too fast, so there's 2 different ways to combat this. One is we can jump into our working folder and we can kind of scoot everything up, which is totally fine. Or what we could do is actually kind of find the point where we want to start seeing things. And I could just take our working folder and just drag this up a little bit. All right, and now it fits really well. But everything hides because we need to freeze on the last frame. I'll right click, time, freeze on last frame, so now everything stays. This is so cool. And the cool part about this is that it's transparent, right? So once we export it, we'll actually be able to overlay this onto video. Just level this up just a little bit more. What I'm gonna do is actually duplicate these, bring them down, and we're gonna do what we did earlier with our building. So I'm going to change the hue and saturation of this. We will colorize it, and we'll play around with the color. And I kind of want to get like an orangish, reddish look like that. Nice. Say we wanted like a solid color instead, that's really easy to do too. I just delete this hue saturation, and I can actually throw a fill effect on here and change this to something like white. So now it looks like this. So we have this white little bleed followed by the actual animation, and it's as simple as that. Now, if you want to animate things outwards, that's really easy to do too. All right, I'm going to click Alt-N on these bottom layers, and then on these top layers, Control-Shift-D. All right, bring everything up. I'll delete this. I'll duplicate what we had to start. Bring it up. Bring it all the way here. And before we did a track matte, now we're going to do a track matte invert. So I'm just going to click this invert button right here. So now when it plays along, it goes away. And just to show you guys, it's transparent. So it starts off here, animates in. We got our beautiful animation, our fun little title slate here. Leave it up for a few seconds, and then it all goes away. So here is what we have so far. This looks great. Now the last tip I need to show you guys is actually how to export something with an alpha channel, aka when you have transparency behind your animation and you want to overlay it onto video. So it's really simple. All we need to do is go to Composition, Add to Render Queue, and then within here I need to click on the output module, go to Format, switch it to QuickTime, and then change the channels from RGB to RGB plus alpha. From there, you can click here and decide where you want to export your video to, and it's as simple as that. So this is how you use ink bleeds in After Effects. Thanks for watching and stay creative.